Live and online, it's Sleepless with Steve and the Movie Book Club with your host, Steve Pulaski.
Back and better than ever, Sleepless with Steve, live on YouTube on this Wednesday evening. A little tardy to the party, but that's okay. Steve Pulaski with you, along with my inimitable co-host on one of the biggest shows of the year, Dominic Guanzon in the trademark blue polo, Joe Viso over there, looking swell as always. And we are got one of the biggest shows today, and of course we are pressed in terms of time, just in general, because this is a big show. So we're probably going to have to address some of this news in the next couple of weeks because there's a lot that broke. Rest in peace, Bob Saget. I can't wait for a new Final Destination movie. Holland, hashtag Holland for the Oscars. There's my opinions on everything. So we definitely are going to be addressing this. The Oscar story probably isn't going to get settled for a couple weeks at least. And Bob Saget, I don't think he's left my mind these last few days in one way or another. Oh, and also, too, the last thing, shout out to the Bears for doing 2 of the 3 things that they were supposed to do, but not hashtag fire Ted Phillips. But anyway, so we're rolling today, man. We are rolling. So this is one of our commemorative sort of year-end wrap-up shows. We would have done this last week had Don't Look Up not be such a major movie that we just felt super compelled to tackle. But today we are each of us are giving our top 5 favorite movies of 2021. Now, my list has been published for the last couple of days over at stevepulaski.com. You can check that out. Next week, we'll be diving into our top 5 worst list, which is always one of these shows that I look forward to the most. Probably number 1 is the Oscars. Number 2 is the worst list. Number 3 is the best list, if I'm being completely honest here, of the shows that I love doing over and over again with these two gentlemen. But we have got our top 5 favorite movies of 2021. We're going to be breaking those down each. Before we jump into things real quick, guys, how are you? Joe, we'll start with you.
I'm doing good. I'm glad you brought up all the news segments that we don't get to cover this weekend because it seems like the world was just like, yeah, let's let them cover Alec Baldwin for like 4 weeks straight. All right, now let's drop like something worth talking about at the beginning and the end of the show. It's just like, damn, like, one, we lost, Bob Saget, like you said, but then, like, a Final Destination movie, and it's just like, man, next week, watch, there'll be, like, even bigger bombshells dropped of, like, wow, if only we get to talk about news at some point. But
as long as nobody dies.
Yeah.
Like,
as for me, like, it's this show I look forward to the most, then the worst of, then the Oscars. But they are in my top 3. I look forward to doing these shows with you guys all the time. And I know we're pressed for time, so I'm just going to pass it off to Dom.
Yeah, dude, getting well over the sickness and now just waiting for the world to hopefully calm the hell down with the COVID. But that's all right. We got more movies. I actually watched most of Sidney Poitier's In the Heat of the Night. And Sidney Poitier, rest in peace, is fantastic actor. And he really saves that movie. I'm not a fan of that movie, but I like what it's doing, but it's a little too slow for me. And that's someone who generally wants movies to slow down, but a little bit too much. Anyway, they're doing just fine over here.
A Raisin in the Sun and A Patch of Blue should be next on your list for Sidney Poitier. That guy, oh God, that was another heartbreaker. I had to lecture my co-host at the radio when that news broke. She didn't know who Sidney Poitier was. I was like, gather around, children. Let me tell you about the once living legend, Sidney Poitier. Yeah, that was sad news, man. I think now that Kirk Douglas is dead, I think he's the last of like the golden age of old Hollywood actors. I think he was the last. He was 94. I think he was the last because Kirk Douglas was one of the last when he passed a couple of years ago too. But rest in peace.
First black man on screen, last one out.
Honestly, he wasn't going out easy, and he's been like a Bahamian ambassador, if I'm not mistaken, for the last several years. He hasn't acted in many years.
Is Henry Belafonte part of that golden age, or is he more like 60s, 50s and 60s?
He's more, I think he's more 60s. And obviously, I think, he's more remembered too for his music, than anything. But yeah, Belafonte, I mean, I guess you could put him in there. Deo, Forever a Banger, along with some other ones. But anyway, let's dive into our top 5 of 2021 now. Looking forward to seeing what you guys put. I realized, though, making this list when I was making it on Sunday, when I made both of my lists for my website, that I realized that in my top 5, I only had one that we covered on the show. So I kind of cheated there. I don't know if I cheated. I just generally see movies because I have no life. But here we go. We might as well start. If Joe, you're ready, because Joe's got the hardest job of us all. But my number 5 movie on my list is In the Heights. I knew from the moment I walked out of the theater that this was going to make my top 5 in some capacity. And the fact that it fell all the way to number 5 shows that we did get some pretty great movies this year after June when this movie came out. Man, oh man, with In the Heights, I get if you're not a musical fan, it's whatever. But part of the thing that made In the Heights very special was because it was, if you think about the time, and it feels like 10 years ago already, but like the world was looking a little bit more optimistic. Most of us had already been vaccinated, or a great portion of us have already been vaccinated, at the height of our vaccination status, going back to the movies had reopened. At that time, I think that was only like my 4th movie I had seen in theaters. And to go back and watch that movie in theaters, it was such a jubilant movie to go back to the theaters to. It's a damn shame nobody took advantage, or very few took advantage of that. But even beyond the external relevance of when it was released, this is what musicals are all about. Insanely catchy numbers, a litany of interesting characters, and a really good setting that was big enough, vast enough, diverse enough to let a lot of characters populate it and make the plot just a revolve around the characters with the colorful setting in the background too. You have Anthony Ramos in this. You have Corey Hawkins in this movie. So you don't have, A-listers rather, but that even makes it better in my opinion, because you can watch these actors. You don't really know a lot about them or even know them at all. So it allows their characters to sort of transcend, along with just a really, in general, I think, beautiful message, on top of the fact too, that Lin-Manuel Miranda can probably have the crown now in terms of being one of the most popular, beloved, and talented lyricists that there is. He didn't direct this movie. This movie was directed by John M. Chu, who is famous for the Step Up movies, as well as the Justin Bieber Never Say Never documentary. So they tapped a perfect director in terms of somebody who can capture grandiose settings and space and just very big set pieces that pop like a fireworks show throughout this entire movie. It is on HBO Max. It was one of those hybrid releases. It was off HBO Max for a period of months. I checked this weekend. It is up there. You should watch it. In the Heights, number 5 on my list of favorites for 2021.
As a Hamilton and Crazy Rich Asians stan on both of those fronts, this was like a dream come true. This was awesome. It's like, just like how Hamilton is like, yeah, this is how America should be. In the Heights is like, yeah, this is pretty much how it should. Please, can we have Puerto Ricans dancing in the streets again? Can we beat this COVID thing so we can have salsa music flooding the streets of New York? I want to
chilled
see that,
ice,
please.
Preferably people that can actually dance too.
Yeah, there you go.
That's my number 5. Then it goes to Dom, I believe, or Joe.
Yes. My number 5 is One Night in Miami. In a lot of, doing a top 5, it's so difficult. It's not just a raw star rating for me, or not just a pure mathematical thing. It's like when 2 movies are great, but they kind of compete with one another because there's very similar wheelhouses. You kind of got to pick and choose. So I actually chose this over Ma Rainey because they're both plays turned into movies about Black issues in America.
Well, I'm glad you did, because Ma Rainey is technically 2020.
That is true. Well, actually, technically, I looked it up. One Night in Miami is technically, it debuted on Christmas Day, 2020.
But it was Amazon Prime in 2021.
Right, exactly. So that was my justification. And either way, I chose it over Ma Rainey just because the fact that these 4 people met is insane. And first and foremost, like, that's just crazy. It almost seems like a made up like Avengers movie, but it's 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 still it actually feels less like a play than Ma Rainey in certain aspects. Don't get me wrong, it's definitely close quarters, lots of monologuing and lots of dialogue back and forth, shot reverse shot, but it's just so captivating. All four of these people are real life people, are larger than life, and all the actors are killing it. Like there's the Malcolm X here portrayal is a much softer one than I was actually expecting, and you also get to see early Cassius Clay, Muhammad Ali, as opposed to the full-on Muhammad Ali that we are so accustomed to in the sports documentaries. And even just down the line between Jim Brown and Sam Cooke, these are awesome performances. The directorial debut of Regina King, like, god damn, this is her debut. And she's always been on my radar as as a great, fierce actress. And Kemp Powers, that is someone to watch. In many ways, that's a career everyone should be paying attention to, because he wrote this, the original play, and also helped with this as well. Soul, he wrote Soul. Like, what? Are you kidding? Like, where did that come from?
Yep.
And then he's directing Spider-Verse, the next Spider-Verse movie. Like, what the hell is going on? This guy is like one of the greatest, like, quality careers, like in terms of like I forget, like Ratio or whatever, like good to bad movies, and like there's no misses so far. So he's poised to be just a constant home run hitter here. And yeah, this is it's a kind of a no-brainer story, but the fact that they were able, you'll see this with other movies that I chose in this list, but the fact that they were able to bring together this cast of people and really accomplish the story is an accomplishment in and of itself.
Good stuff. Yeah, One Night in Miami, definitely a special movie. Kind of gets overlooked just because of the fact that it was released so early in the year last year. But yeah, knockout movie. Really motivated me to go peruse more of Sam Cooke's music too, if nothing else.
Yeah.
And Regina King, definitely a director with something to say. Looking forward to seeing what else she does. That's One Night in Miami in a Perfect World. That's a movie that will continue to be seen and be talked about. And I'm glad you're not the only person. I've seen it included on several best lists too. So I'm glad people are still watching and talking about that movie.
Before we get to I want to say, I thought it was a 2020 release. And if I knew it did qualify for 2021, it wouldn't be my top 5. It would be my top 10, though, because I do agree with everything that Dom said. It is that good of a movie.
I believe it was an honorable mention on my 2020 list. I believe it was.
Yeah.
It really did float between the 2 years.
Maybe I put it on my 2020
You can make an argument either or. Yeah, I know, like, you can, if it came out in February, we would have thrown hands. Yeah. But with these Christmas and like even like next year, if you want to argue The Tragedy of Macbeth is a 2022 movie, I'm not going to crucify you.
You're not going to Macbeth me.
I'm not going to Macbeth you.
All right. Anyways, moving on to me with my number 5 of 2021 was something I said the day that we reviewed it and everything that will probably be in my top 5. And lo and behold, I kept that promise because I had that much fun with it. I went to go see it 2 times in theaters. It is No Time to Die, directed by Cary Joji Fukunaga, the final installment to Daniel Craig's era of Bond films. This was everything I can hope for as a Bond fan. It was great that like this year also, I got a great trilogy of the Holland films, and that came to a great conclusion. But for me, No Time to Die, I think, just had more going on it, like more weight to it, because the last installment kind of sucked and I really wanted it to end on a good note, and by damn God, like, he ended it on a good note. This was everything I wanted a finale Bond to be, really setting the character off in a very different, unique way that we used to see with Bond films. I really loved all the action sequences in this. I think this is by far Daniel Craig's best performance as Bond. I love all the side characters in this installment. And, I mean, we talked about this in the review. Dom and I were nerding out about this, but the Cuba sequence, I mean, I cannot go on any longer about it. It is literally a miniature James Bond film within a Bond film. It's great. I love the cinematography in it. Like I said, the stunt choreography. James Bond finally got his one shot, one take action sequence, and I thought it was amazing. Damn, I mean, it is everything a Bond fan, I think, could hope for to conclude a whole era of Bond films. And like, it's not my favorite of the Daniel Craig films. I still think Skyfall is better. I still think Casino Royale is better. But this was a treat to get after waiting so long when this was supposed to come out in 2019. I was very happy with it. Daniel Craig will probably be my favorite Bond or second favorite Bond, and I can't wait to see where the franchise goes next.
They set themselves up pretty well too. I mean, like this is it's funny because this is the James Bond a whole generation of people have known.
Yeah.
Only known. We grew up with potentially Pierce Brosnan. I don't know like how conscious you were of James Bond at the time. I kind of did, but I mean, cleanly we can say Craig is our James Bond. But it's funny how we have all grown up with knowing James Bond as a franchise that has this deep emotional connection and thread between all the movies for the most part.
Yeah.
All the other James Bonds, a majority of the James Bond films, you can't say that because it's so, herky jerky with actors and tones and just, one-off stories seemingly that it's actually really impressive that this is probably the best James Bond has ever been. It really depends on what you think Bond should be or how you perceive Bond. But you can definitely make an argument that this is the best the franchise has been, at least since the Connery days.
And before I go any further, I wanted to start with this, and I was reading my notes wrong. I do want to say that this year, compared to last year for some reason, there wasn't really a 4-star movie for me at all, which I thought was really weird. So, like, while these are in my top 5, these are also, like, to me, just great films, not amazing, which is weird because last year I had 3 4-star films, and we didn't even go to a damn theater.
It's weird, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like this year, I will say, going back and reading my reviews of these best movies, I would go back and give one, and I'll mention it here. I would go back and give one movie I gave 3.5 stars, 4 stars on my list. But I want to rewatch it before I do because I might amend it in some ways. Mm-hmm. But I would go back and give this a movie coming up 4 stars as opposed to 3.5. I only gave it to 2 though. 3 though this year. There's 3 I gave it to. Moving on though, my number 4 favorite film of the year. Serve me up an extra large licorice pizza. Thoroughly enjoyed Licorice Pizza, originally called Soggy Bottom up until a few months before its release. This is the brand new Paul Thomas Anderson movie. Now, Paul Thomas Anderson, I have not seen everything he's done. I've seen about half of his filmography. Boogie Nights, There Will Be Blood. I honestly didn't make it through The Master, and I've been meaning to go back and rewatch that to finally watch it. But Paul Thomas Anderson, if you know him and if you've seen his movies, this is another PTA joint, as I call it, that sort of prioritizes essence over logical plot progression. And that's kind of his bag as a director, where scenes might not necessarily play out the most realistically, but it's the essence and the worlds he creates that make you go along with it, that make you sort of smile and accept it. And in this movie, he downshifts more so than I think he ever does. There's not really this lingering cloud of ominousness that, perturbs Boogie Nights or There Will Be Blood. You don't have that with Licorice Pizza, but it's not a fluffy romp either. Alana Haim should seriously be in consideration for Best Actress. She's that good. This is her debut. If you don't know her, she's part of a trio along with her 2 sisters who make cameos in this movie, a band called Haim. And they make some very interesting music, I'll add, too. The kid in the movie, too, who plays Gary Cooper Hoffman, is Philip Seymour Hoffman's son, which is very interesting in and of itself as well, because he doesn't really look like his father, and he doesn't really act like his father either. He's a fascinating screen presence, though. I go back and forth with what really caught me about this movie, and I just think it's the relaxed sort of 70s aesthetic, and it's also just how every vignette in this movie works. And with movies that have a loose plot structure kind of like this, that doesn't usually happen. There's usually a flabby part or a weaker part. Sean Penn shows up as a tan-skinned veteran actor. Bradley Cooper is Barbara Streisand's coked up boyfriend. All these work. Tom Waits is a film director. All these little asides just add to this movie's sort of charm. But at the core of it is Hyman and Hoffman, who are so very electric in the slow burn chemistry that they sort of manifest throughout this whole thing, and how they both don't always like each other, but they need each other. And the movie too sort of spins the old cliche on the head of like, usually it's during the climax when the two love interests or the two characters fight, argue, go their separate ways. That happens like 3 times in this movie, where there's long stretches where the characters are just them individual selves and they need a break from each other. And Paul Thomas Anderson plays with that, and it works beautifully. This is a super close to home movie. It's shot very close to where he grew up. It's kind of sort of half loosely tinged based off of his experiences as a young guy, as a young sort of film student as well. This is just a very nice movie. It's currently in theaters now. It's not streaming anywhere to my knowledge yet. Probably in the next couple of weeks, it'll come to video on demand for a $20 rental and then slowly find its way onto one of these ubiquitous streaming services. And when it does, it is absolutely worth your time. It's a charming movie. And the last thing I'll throw in there is, because people have asked me about what licorice pizza means. Even at dinner today, too. I was at dinner earlier today, and I was talking about my favorite movies of the year. And the couple asked me, they're like, what's licorice pizza? Well, it comes from 2 things. Number one, first off, it's not even said or referenced in the movie, which I find absolutely hilarious. Licorice Pizza was a record store in the 70s, mainly on the West Coast. That's number one. And number two, it also originated, it's commonly believed to have originated during an Abbott and Costello skit when they're trying to sell records and they're not selling records. And I think it's Costello, if I remember correctly. It's Costello who says we should put sprinkles on these and sell these as licorice pizza. That's where the title comes from. Licorice Pizza, though, great film. If it's still in theaters by you, I highly recommend it. It is just a really nice, pleasant time at the movies. You'll have a shit-eating grin on your face throughout this movie. It's very, very good, very funny in wry sort of ways. And Alana Haim's family in the movie is her real-life family, which just adds to a really good early scene when she brings home a boyfriend. Great, great film. Number 4, Licorice Pizza.
I did not watch the movie, but Haim is the name of the band that she's a part of. I actually saw that. I didn't realize, I didn't connect these dots until just now, but I saw them at the Grammys, like on TV, and they killed it on the Grammys. I don't know if they won or not, but they're good. So that's cool. I really need to check them out.
If she has a choice, she has an acting career ahead of her. She's got a very good career ahead of her because she's got that it factor. She's got a magnetic personality, and the camera loves her. The camera loves her. She's got like a million different outfits in this movie. She's enigmatic. She's not easy to define. She's almost kind of like, if I had to compare it to anything, she's almost kind of like a micro mini Aubrey Plaza in that way.
I was just thinking that. I felt like you were describing Aubrey Plaza.
She's got an Aubrey Plaza quality to her, too, especially because she's relatively, for being in a band and starting an acting career, she's a relatively quiet person. But
Joe, we're going to say something?
I'm really upset I never got to go see this because the day I was going to go see it, an ice storm happened out here. And the time before that, I flipped a coin on Darkest Alley or Nightmare Alley and then Licorice Pizza, and I landed on Nightmare Alley.
You probably saw good Bradley Cooper. Cooper perform.
Yeah. Either way, I was having a Bradley Cooper, in my movie, some sort of way.
Steve, did you mention that Bradley Cooper is dating Barbara Streisand in Licorice Pizza?
Yes, I was trying to remember his name off the top of my head, his actor's name, because of the fact that it is true. I'm trying to remember John Peters, the guy who dated Barbara Streisand for like 9 years. I don't want to ruin anything. Bradley Cooper is at his most unhinged in this movie. Absolutely
that's saying something.
Unhinged.
As someone who saw American Hustle, that's saying something.
Hysterically funny.
Wow. It's also funny because of A Star Is Born. Then he's playing a character who dated A Star Is Born's Barbara Streisand while he was in A Star Is Born. Never mind.
That fact was not lost on me.
Okay. Moving on then to my number 4. My number 4 is another all-star team here, Spider-Man No Way Home. Being someone who witnessed all kinds of superhero movie disasters through the 90s and 2000s. No Way Home really is a triumph of the superhero genre. And I know triumph is way overused from critics. But when I say it, I really mean this is a freaking triumph. And it really, whereas Avengers Endgame was a triumph for the new guard, the modern guard, you know, the main group of superheroes that we know them now, No Way Home literally tears up space time to celebrate and properly close out, all the Spider-Man movies that came before it, or at least the ones with Tobey Maguire. I know there was some Spider-Man stuff before that in the 60s and 70s. We won't talk about that. But it's an accomplishment. And it's like almost buoyed by the fact that I could think of a billion reasons how this could have gone wrong. I can't emphasize that enough. I try not to think that way with movies. And I don't often that much, but with superhero movies, I grew up with like watching all the Batman movies. They don't hold up, dude. A lot of them don't hold up. Elektra, Daredevil, Green Lantern, man. Dude, no, this one was such a lean movie. And it highlights the best of the best. Willem Dafoe, Alfred Molina, Tobey Maguire, Andrew Garfield, brings them all back, celebrates them. And it even does the thing that normally I would hate, which is that, which is a story now going back and making a happy ending out of a previous tragic story. I was like, oh no, see, in the end, he became good. And it's like, now he gets his happy ending. It's like, I don't like that. Let something be tragic and let something sit with me. But in this case, I don't know why I felt differently. Like, yeah, dude, everyone kind of gets their happy ending. Well, except maybe the main guy, the main Peter Parker we know. But that's for spoilers. But dude, this is like the best nostalgia I could possibly get. And that's someone who hammers constantly on nerdy nostalgia BS all the time. No, man, this one just felt right. And it hammered everything out just the way that it can't think of anything it could have done better.
Yeah, is that it?
That is all for me.
Oh, no, I just want to say, I mean, if there's been one movie so far this year that I've had so much fun talking about, it is this movie. I haven't talked to so many people this year, and I've been catching up with all of them, and I just got a flood of text messages asking me what did I think of No Way Home, and just reconnecting with those people after talking to them for so long, not talking to them for so long, or not seeing them for so long, and just FaceTiming them or going on Discord, whatever it may be, and just nerding out or just like really being like, oh my god, like I can't believe they actually did this in the movie. It is a celebration for the fans, and like it wasn't one of those, hey, look, here's this character, here's this thing, okay, that's all we're gonna bring them back for. No, they're actually used in the plot. I mean, I could go on for days about this, but just go watch our review.
Exactly. I mean, it's everybody who sees this has an opinion on it, and it's great that our generation can really, really connect over it as well.
Anyway, I will move on to my number 4 of 2021. This is a movie unfortunately I was gone when you guys reviewed it. I missed out on it. You guys had 2 movies that night. You guys had to review Mortal Kombat and this film, which is Mitchells and the Machines. This to me was one of the biggest surprises of the year, because I kind of looked at it as like, okay, this will probably be Netflix's like animated film they'll just throw out there, because most of the animated films that go to Netflix I kind of was just whatever about. However, the more and more I kept looking into it, I was just like, oh, Phil Lord and Chris Miller are producing it. Okay, that's a pretty good sign. Oh, it's from Sony Pictures Animation. They're kind of doing that same animated style of Spider-Verse. Maybe that will be fun. And lo and behold, this ended up being one of my favorite like animated films this year. I haven't got a chance to watch Encanto. I've heard amazing things about it. I thought Luca was good, but like if I had to pick one, Mitchells and Machines or Luca, yeah, Mitchells versus the Machines takes it by a mile. I love these characters. I'm gonna quote Steve in his own review here, but like, yeah, this is like the modern day Incredibles. This was this was a ton of fun to see. I love seeing the character types here with the dad, the mom, the brother, the sister, they really did play like a dysfunctional family throughout this whole road trip. I love the comedy in it, and like I said, the art style goes really cool with it. And the fact that this is based on like a short like kids like graphic book or whatever, like art book, whatever you want to call it, and they managed to make a well thought out movie, I was really impressed with. I had a ton of fun with this movie. I absolutely loved it. I don't know if there's a sequel in the works. I would totally be down to hang out with the Mitchells again sometime. If you haven't watched it yet, it is by far the funniest animated, probably the best family film for me this year. And I highly suggest checking out Mitchells versus the Machines.
Yeah, I would argue that it's probably a shoo-in for Best Animated Feature, although I said the same thing about the Lego Movie and the damn thing didn't get nominated. We all know the Academy's prejudice against Black people. I will never let that joke die. But yeah, I loved Luca too, but I'd have to edge it over Mitchell's versus the Machines just in terms of the full package of an animated movie.
Year. Luca, you thought was better than Mitchell's, or
no? I'd have to edge Luca out. I'd have to say Mitchell's versus the Machines is the animated movie of the year. I mean, and I loved Luca. I think I'm higher on Luca than a lot of people, and a lot of people like it. But Mitchell's is the whole package.
And when I was going through, I was like, oh yeah, Raya and the Last Dragon came out this year. I forgot about that. I was like, damn, and that was the one I was really looking forward to. I was like, oh, that movie looks incredible. This is the Disney movie I'm like looking forward to. I think it's gonna be great. And no, the movie with the giant Furby in the mall that like comes alive and becomes Skynet was the one I went, now that's a motion picture.
Good stuff. I'll have time for my number 5 real quick. I don't want to rush to number 3. Excuse me. Number 3 is The Card Counter. And this is the movie, if I'd go back, I'd give it 4 stars because this movie stayed with me for about a month after I watched it. This is Paul Schrader's new movie. Paul Schrader, the last thing he directed, it was looking to be his last movie because he's getting up there in age. His last movie was the Benedict Cumberbatch movie, First Reformed. And if you haven't seen that, I highly recommend that you do. The Card Counter stars Oscar Isaac, Tiffany Haddish, and a very measured dramatic role, I might add. She adds a lot to this movie. As well as Ty Sheridan, and who was in The Tender Bar recently as well. This is an excellent movie about a very glamorous profession that drains all the glamour out of it. It's about a career poker player, and it robs the entire movie of any sort of glitz glamour that you think of with poker playing in casinos and such. To give you an example, Oscar Isaac plays a man named William Tell, who he's a traveling poker player. The first thing he does in every hotel room he goes into is tie every single surface up with bed sheets and twine. Everything, even the desk. That just gives you an inkling into how dialed back this movie is. It features very austere interiors. It's a very cold movie, but it's about retribution in a lot of ways too. It's also got probably my favorite score of any movie this year. Robert Levin Ben did the score for this, and he keeps using the same haunting synth music over and over and over again. And it's doomy and it's frightening and it adds to it. The last thing I'll say too is that as far as some of the scariest scenes of the year, and this is not a horror movie as much as it's a drama, if a thriller in a way, this movie has some of the scariest scenes of the year. And they're scenes because William Tell, Oscar Isaac's character, was in Guantanamo Bay. He was actually one of the guards in Guantanamo Bay. And the way those scenes are shot are harrowing. They're shot with a fisheye lens that distorts and creates this wobbly, unsettling effect whenever there's a Guantanamo flashback. It's these slime green jail cells that show everything: defecating, torture, waterboarding. It is disgusting. And to see it in a theater was unnerving as hell. It was some of the most harrowing, frightening scenes in any movie this year, but it's supremely well directed, supremely well acted. Oscar Isaac, I think, probably gives the performance that's been the most overlooked of the year because he has to do a lot with this movie. And Tiffany Haddish, to her credit too, assimilates nicely. She plays William Tell's sponsor in the movie, his poker sponsor. But it's really about trying to get this young poker player on the straight and narrow. And I don't want to really go any further in terms of what it is. Willem Dafoe is in it too, as one of the Guantanamo guards. He is disturbing as hell in this movie. This is great. The card counter, you can rent it now. It's on Apple TV. It's on Vudu, I believe. You can rent it now. I hope it comes to a streaming platform because I will come over to like friends' houses and put this thing on. It is that good. It is haunting. If I could go back, I'd give that movie 4 stars because that movie stayed with me like few movies this year. Maybe like of my top 3, all 3 of my top 3 stayed with me. This one lingered the longest in terms of just replaying moments in my head. It's excellent, the card counter.
Oscar Isaac is one of those guys that like literally can do the minimal thing on screen of like acting and somehow be very captivating. And I heard it's very much like that in this movie from him.
He's excellent. He's excellent. And then a month later, I had to watch him play Gomez in Addams Family for the second time around.
Hey,
you know,
man,
like,
sometimes you get
bro.
the Llewyn Davis performance, and sometimes you get him as Apocalypse in the same year.
Exactly. But Oscar Isaac is usually the best part in even some of the worst movies. The card counter, though, go watch it. I think it's one of the more overlooked mainstream movies of the year, too. We'll take a quick intermission here. Dom and Joe are coming back with their number 3 choices, and we are going to give our number 2 picks for favorite films of 2021, and of course, spend time and talk about our number 1s. There's still a lot left to get to on Sleepless with Steve. Don't go anywhere. We'll be back in about 60 seconds on Sleepless with Steve. Back and better than ever after a quick Zoom-sponsored intermission at Sleepless with Steve, one of our biggest shows of the year, counting down our top 5, count them 5, favorite films of 2021. Been a lot of great choices so far. Love what you guys are saying about these. I feel bad because, again, only one we talked about of my list was covered on Sleepless with Steve, but it gives more homework to my.
And we started with this, so we don't know. We're going in blind from here on out.
You know, and Joe, shout out to Joe again. Got to give Joe a shout out. He's managing a lot over there with the slideshow, doing a good job as well. Got the YouTube up as well, so I'm watching the little playback too. Doing a great job as usual. But without further ado, Dominic, I believe you have a number 3 you want to get to.
My number 3 of 2021 is a movie that did show up in 2021. I promise is Promising Young Woman. Another Christmas release from 2020, but like One Night in Miami, it's this year. So yeah, dude, Promising Young Woman. It is a revenge story that, to me, succinctly summarizes sexual assault for women, but doesn't commit the sin of diving too deep in its fantasy by giving us a not a happy ending, but a satisfying one, and then 2, not being too preachy. Which is a thing pretty much just for all these, race-based, orientation-based, all these issues, how they're handled in entertainment. In fact, one movie on my list will address that directly. But this is a really is a hard-hitting movie, man. And Carey Mulligan is on fire in this movie, dude, blazing a trail through all the people. Character not only wronged her best friend and wronged her, but also just her acting is incredible. I mean, enough's been said about Carey Mulligan's ability to act through a simple, a seemingly just the subtlest of emotions, but there it is once again, and she's proved why she's on top in that regard. But yeah, dude, this story takes so many good twists and turns that you really don't know where it's gonna go, and even when you do know, this is like, oh, okay, this is what we're doing. This is what this moment is. This person is getting revenge or Carey Mulligan is getting revenge for this person. It's still deeply satisfying. And it's actually, I really believe it's not being too preachy, even though she is going back systemically through all the people. I promise you, if you haven't seen this movie, I promise you it's not too preachy, because it's just so intimate. It's so goddamn intimate, and it's so ingrained into her character, because when you find out what the hell happened to her and her best friend, Jesus Christ. And then really it makes you think, right? Fridge horror, man. You think, yeah, this shit happens every day in America. Yeah, every hour in America. I don't know the statistics, man, but it's a lot. And it's an epidemic. It's horrible. And the fact that we're still able to experience this kind of trauma and tragedy through something that is seemingly so slick, and goddamn that freaking toxic scene, dude. You know what I'm talking about, where if you've seen the movie where they're doing a cover of Britney Spears' Toxic, which sounds corny, but goddamn, it's epic as hell. Dude, this is hitting it out of the park. And last thing I'll say is that Bo Burnham's role here, he doesn't do a lot of acting gigs, which I think helps his case, just being, just a great artist of our time. But his role here is extremely important, and what his character, what's revealed about his character is super. It completes it for me, to be honest with you, where you learn that this issue of sexual assault, rape, it's a comprehensive thing. It's not like we were led to believe, which is a dude in a van jumping out and, jumping you in the bushes or something, right? No, it's a lot more than that. And the fact that this movie can do it in such an entertaining, engaging way, you can have fun, epic moments, but it still hits you hard. Goddamn, number 3, well earned.
Good choice. Good choice there. I do need to watch that again. I wasn't as high on it the first time around, but I recognize a lot of its great qualities. And I promise this relates. Quick sidebar. I'm rewatching the Scream movies in lieu of the new one coming out Friday. And I forgot that Scream 3 doesn't do a lot right, truthfully. But Scream 3, one of the themes in it, besides attacking trilogies and horror movies, the climax is totally about sexual assault in Hollywood. And I forgot about that. And like,
when did
no,
that
I'm
come
serious.
out? Like the 90s.
2000.
Oh, 2000.
2000. Yeah, and I forgot about it too, because I watched it 10 years ago. But you know what the greatest irony of that whole thing is? And you can see some critical reevaluation of it online. The greatest irony of the damn thing is that the climax revolves around like the casting couch and everything, and bringing that to light. And then when the credits roll, directed by Wes Craven, executive producer Harvey Weinstein.
That's right, because it's Miramax.
Because it's a Miramax movie. And I'm like, God, man, oh, shove. I'm sure. Like, but yeah, like I was impressed that movie tackled it of all. It's one of the only really good things, truthfully, about Scream 3.
Yeah.
But Promising Young Woman, though, not to derail, Promising Young Woman, I'm really glad that not only Carey Mulligan won that, but Emerald Fennell, I believe her name is.
Best adapted screenplay.
She won Best Adapted Screenplay, and then it came out at the Oscars that she directed that thing while pregnant.
Yeah.
What a 1-2 punch. God damn, I forgot about that. Like, Jesus Christ.
Her speech was one of the best of the Oscars last year. Her speech when she accepted the award was one of the best.
Yeah. Same thing with One Night in Miami, because Dom and I loved when we reviewed it. I think that was a 4-star movie I gave. But again, I counted it as a 2020 release because, it came out in 2020, but then came on demand in 2021, early 2021. I will tell you this. If you really are like, well, where would it be on your list? That would probably be my number 1. So you would just take everything and move it down 1 and have Promising Young Woman as number 1.
Damn.
But like as far as 2020 films, it's definitely in my top 5, but I'm not going to go into that. That's really complicated. I'm going to focus on this year's list and what I have in front of me now. Anyways, my number 3 this year. Hot damn, I have been waiting for a movie like this for a while, ever since beating Red Dead Redemption 2, and that is The Harder They Fall.
There you go.
I have been itching for a Western movie so bad, man. And not just like a slow, like, I don't get me wrong. I absolutely love Unforgiven. I love how slow of a burn it is. I love how much it is an anti-Western film. I love how it's like, you know, about the gunslinger becoming old and dying out and everything. I love that. But after playing Red Dead 2, I was like, you know what I really need? I really need a big budgeted shootout, exploding filled Western movie to come. Lo and behold, thank God Netflix made one with a banger, probably my favorite all-star cast this year, man. From Jonathan Majors to Zazie Beetz to the one, the only, who I hope, if they want to choose a person of color to be James Bond, Idris Elba. And I put the pictures in different order. Lakeith Stanfield as well. And, like, you know, once again, to bring her up, Regina King. Like, the cast in this movie was phenomenal. The sets, the costumes, the action. It's violent. It's bloody. The final shootout in this film, I was like, yes, this is everything I wanted. It was
soundtrack.
Soundtrack kicks ass in this movie. Very much inspired by Django's soundtrack and what Tarantino did in that movie. This to me, I mean, like, you want to, like, I was wondering what the hell is taking so long to get another Western since Django and also, like, The Hateful Eight. I know we got The Magnificent Seven, I think is what that movie was called, with Denzel and Chris Pratt, and I was like, whatever, okay, well, fine. But ever since then, it's like, man, when are we going to get another big budgeted Western film? Because you're only getting the smaller ones, like the Brother Sisters and everything with John C. Reilly and Joaquin Phoenix. And finally, yeah, we got it with The Harder They Fall, man. I had a blast with this. If you haven't watched this and you're a fan of Westerns, or if you loved playing through Red Dead 2, this is one hell of a good Western to watch, especially after playing that game. It'll give you everything you want with the Western genre, gunslinger and all. Absolutely loved it. Check it out if you haven't. It's on Netflix.
Thinking about back to those final shootouts, I'm actually inserting like Red Dead noises, like the slow motion, the guitar twang.
Yeah,
I'm like retroactively inserting those noises.
I played the first game, so I can kind of hear that on a lot of levels too. Yeah, that was a fun review on the show too. Shout out James Samuel too for really killing his first major feature length debut. Because that was a special movie and a lot of people watched it. A lot of people like that. Great on one of the best ensembles of the year if you look at it top to bottom. Moving forward, my number 2 is Michael Sarnowski's Pig. Another tidbit of news we're not covering today is that Michael Sarnowski is directing A Quiet Place Part 3. That I cannot wait for. They got a great guy to direct this. But we'll talk about Pig. Now, first off, the public reception and just the public knowledge of Nick Cage does not do this movie great favors because of how Nick Cage, the movie choices that he's made over the last several years, really in kind of the not really a meme, but sort of like the punching bag he's become over the years, does this movie no favors. And I worry that like Queen and Slim a couple of years ago became the Black Bonnie and Clyde movie. This becomes the Nick Cage Pig movie. But this movie is not a comedy. This movie is one of the darkest movies that I saw all last year. It's a sullen movie, too. It's a miserable movie. It's glum. And at its core, though, if I could summarize it, the movie is essentially about what it really means to be alive and care about something and how painful and awful caring about something so much can be. Because essentially the plot of the movie is Nick Cage is a once venerated chef who kind of now lives the hermetic life. He lives in the Oregonian wilderness, and his only companion is this pig who hunts down truffles that he can sell the truffles to these 5-star joints that charge like $120 for 6 bites of food. One of these places. I didn't think there'd be a movie about the dark underbelly of like fine dining this year, or that ever such a thing existed, but this movie shines a light a little bit on it. Alex Wolff plays a really good businessmen in this movie, a restaurateur slash businessman in this movie, and a young guy too. Obviously, Alex Wolff's very young. And this line is going to sound like a comedy, and I'm not going to do it justice here, but it's one of my favorite lines of the entire year because essentially when Nick Cage's Rob, his character's pig gets pignapped, if you will, when the pig gets stolen, he becomes on a hell-bent quest risking his life to get this pig back because he loves this pig so much. And he tasks Alex Wolff's character to drive him to try to find the pig and find who stole it. There's a great line when they're like, when Nick Cage is just ripping down the shelves of the basement of this restaurant, and he's telling Alex Wolff where to take him next. And he says, "I just want you to keep me in the loop." And Nick Cage's Rob says, and I quote, "There is no loop. I'm finding my fucking pig. You're not part of a loop. You're my ride." And the way he says it is so dark and is so mean. This is every like decade, once a decade, we get a performance that reminds us that when he tries, Nick Cage is as good of an actor as any actor working today. And that's no cap. That is no exaggeration. When Nick Cage wants to act, he can act, and he can act his ass off. And he does just that in this movie. In Michael Sarnowski's Pig, it's on Hulu, I believe, is where you can watch it. It's on Hulu. Check it out, but it is not, I use this line a lot, you can ask these two, not a movie to lift the spirits. I'll say that.
Hell yeah.
That pig is cute.
He's so worth like the abuse Nick Cage takes in this movie, because man, this movie is just bloody and violent, and like you wouldn't think it just completely subverts your expectations. Sarnowski has a way with visual poetry, which makes me excited as hell that he's taken over part 3 of A Quiet Place.
Yeah,
crazy. All right, I guess we are moving on to my number 2, which is Malcolm and Marie. This movie I did not see coming. And even while watching it, I was perplexed as to what I was seeing. You know, when I finished it, I was like almost shell-shocked. I'm being hyperbolic, but it's like, what the hell, man? That was something else. And it's like, I put it in perspective. I finally wrapped my head around it. It's like, oh, okay, this is, you know, halfway through the movie, I was like, oh, okay, this is just an extremely intimate performance between two powerhouse actors of our time. Okay, I'm sold. I'm all for this movie 100%. And yeah, dude, that's exactly what it is. If you just want to see good acting and you want to see fun ass dialogue between two incredible performers, then here it is. Like, really, you could not have picked two more really of our time actors just giving it their all for the hell of it. They're producers of this movie, Zendaya and John David. Why did I scroll down to see the cast list? It's literally you
named it all right there.
Zendaya. It's Zendaya and John David Washington, just giving it their all, and they're producers on this movie as well. So it's like, this is just a fun ass time. I'm assuming this is just a fun ass time for them, and just an acting reel in and of itself. That way they don't have to send anyone anything. It's like, hey, just, yeah, if there's ever an offer, it's like, yeah, just watch Malcolm and Marie. That's how we act. Yeah, dude. Like, Sam Levinson directed and wrote this. I'm like, bro, did you receive, like, did the criticism from Assassination Nation get to you that much that you just did a complete 180 and did this instead? I'm like, I like that movie. Had its flaws, but all right, cool. You're going to course correct like this. I guess I'm okay with that.
Don't forget the the poor LA Times critic.
Don't
forget the poor LA Times critic, and the freest of smoke.
I love it. Meta stuff aside, and like, you know, all the real stuff aside, the fact that this movie comments on the two things, and really they're kind of one and the same. Comments on the movie industry, as well as meta talk on social justice in entertainment, which are pretty much just the same thing at this point. And it's a hell of a ride. Like, honestly, this really just felt like Sam Levinson. You know what? I'm just gonna. Here's my thesis on, like, Twitter. Like, here's my take on Twitter discourse, and that's what the movie.
That is a great way of putting that.
Like really, I
Sounds
rewatched
good.
this movie. I rewatched this movie back in, I don't know, November, October, I forget, and or whenever. And it's like, God damn, this really is just it's just one dialogue slash monologue after the other, just tackling each of these meta cultural industry entertainment type things. And that's the way I described it just now. You should be rolling your eyes, but when you watch it, like the balls to be able to do that and not be up your own ass about it, but rather give me something that's one I agree with, and like, yeah, this is called kind of freaking dumb, and also like, hey, this is actually entertaining. I'm actually deeply engrossed in this. Is again, and like all of these movies on my list are accomplishments, and it's just so impressive to me how they were able to. These are all like really everything on my list here, at least for me. I guess how I inadvertently approached it, which is that these are all firebrand kind of movies. These are all, bucking their own trends. And I guess closing out for me, the movie itself, the scene that really hooked me was in a sentimental mood scene where Malcolm and Marie are on the couch playing with each other, and it's like a montage of them talking about the Lego movie, or like how John David Washington is going to direct the next Lego movie and earn Lego $1 billion. It's really funny when you watch it, but any movie that whips out the John Coltrane, Duke Ellington version of In a Sentimental Mood is kind of like throwing down the gauntlet. Like, hey, this is emotional. It's almost to the point of cliche, but if you do it, you are throwing down the gauntlet of like, this is a scene, and you know what? They nailed it for me. That might be one of my favorite scenes from Scenes. If we ever were to do a list of scenes, that would be one of them.
That's a good choice. I almost put that under honorable mentions, but The Lost Daughter on Netflix, which I just saw like the day before making my list, took one of the spots. Yeah, Malcolm and Marie is good. If you get past the fact that it's really not a realistic argument, but it is honestly just a great, delicious dialogue and acting display is awesome. The last thing I'll say about Malcolm and Marie really, though, is that, man, like, God, I would love for Zendaya to angrily make me Kraft mac and cheese and then throw the spoon at me. Yeah. Like that would just be like, you know what I mean? I have problems, but that would be icing on the cake. Good choice though, Malcolm and Marie, because that is at least one of the top 5 Netflix movies of the year.
John David Washington just by himself walking through the lawn at night, just like
punching air.
I'm like, for any other actor, Den's, his father or Will Smith or anyone else doing that, I'd be rolling my eyes. But for him, my God, that was so good.
It's a good first date movie for me too, to just be like, this is what you're gonna get into, this is what you're gonna get into.
You're gonna come home, Steve's gonna talk about the complexity of the Lego movie.
The next time I give a religious movie a half a star rating and then get bombarded, that's exactly what's gonna happen. Good stuff, D.
Anyway, my number 2, there was 2 movies this year. They were both filmed during the pandemic. One was Lockdown and one was one we just talked about. Mine is also Malcolm and Marie at number 2. Dom, we did this last year with our number 2 pick, and we did it again here with our number 2 pick. I swear to God, I did not look at. I mean, you literally sent your list to me today. I got my list done 2 days ago, so I did not know what you had picked and everything. I love it. No, this to me, I'm just gonna echo everything Dom said. This is such a fun movie to watch. I know like what the movie is about can seem very, sad or, like not a good time, but every time I rewatch this movie, I'm laughing more. I'm cracking up more at the dialogue, and I just love it even more by the end. I've watched this movie 3 times. It helps it's on Netflix. I could throw it on my monitor while I'm doing work, or I could just throw it on while I'm playing something or whatever. I watched bits and pieces of it on my phone just because I'm like, I want to watch that scene again where like he literally gets mac and cheese thrown at him when he's out in the yard shadow boxing wheat. I'm just like, there's just scenes I love to rewatch in this movie, and it's just well done. It's 2 great performances from Zendaya and John David Washington, and that's really all what the movie is. To me though, I mean, I've been in a situation where like I've been trapped with a couple while they were arguing the entire night like this, and this movie perfectly captures that, where there's moments I'm like laughing at one person getting roasted by the other, and then there's moments it's like, I gotta leave the room. This is getting a little too hot to handle. And I think Malcolm and Marie perfectly captures that. I have not watched Euphoria, but like after this movie, and now that the second season's out, I do want to check it out because, you know, it's got Sam Levinson directing and writing that show, as well as Zendaya being the main lead. You can catch it on Netflix. I highly recommend it. It is a fun time. I mean, just look at that face. That's how you know this is gonna be a good time. That's what Tom Holland sees when he makes her angry at night.
Good stuff. Yeah, Malcolm and Marie. I did not forget about that one. That came out in February, I think. That was an awesome Valentine's Day movie, too.
Yeah.
That was an awesome Valentine's Day movie, to say the least. We're diving into our number ones now, however. I'll start with mine, and it's one that nobody I talked to has heard of. It was the first movie I saw in 2021. First and the best. It didn't get better than Gabriella Cowperthwaite's Our Friend. If you think you've heard of Gabriella Cowperthwaite, she directed Blackfish. If you think you've heard of her. This is a movie adapted from an Esquire article written by Matthew Teague. This stars Casey Affleck, Jason Segel, and Dakota Johnson. And for the wealth of names in this thing, I can't believe it doesn't get more recognition than it does. I don't know if it's just because it went out very quietly on video on demand. I don't know if it's because it premiered at a festival back in 2019 and didn't get distributed and released till the beginning of 2021. I don't know what the hell the deal was, but this movie needed better PR because this is astoundingly great. And when I tell you the plot, you're going to think it's overly sentimental and you're going to think it's going to be cheesy. The plot of the movie revolves around these three characters. Casey Affleck and Dakota Johnson are married, and Jason Segel is a longtime friend of Dakota Johnson's character. And it is based on the true story of Matthew Teague and his wife, Nicole. Nicole gets diagnosed with ovarian cancer. And the movie takes over the span of 13 years. It revolves around her cancer diagnosis, how it worsens, and how essentially the dynamic between these three evolves, changes, comes to a head at certain points in the movie. Because Jason Segel doesn't have a girlfriend or a wife of his own, no kids. He's over at their house taking care of the kids, helping Casey Affleck's Matt at the hospital, going to the different appointments and stuff like that, watching the kids, caring for him, and so on and so forth. There's a lot about this movie that this movie does right. And this movie could have been another like piece of just dramatic, sentimental pablum, but it isn't. The thing that I continue to remember about this movie, whenever I think about it, whenever I talk about it, is the fact that in the movie's saddest moments, in the saddest moments of this movie, when you could really get the orchestration turned up to 11 and really eject tears, there is often no music. It is just dialogue, or it lets the cries and the sniffles and the sobs of the characters be heard uninterrupted. And that's what gets you. This movie is so profoundly well written that it does not need any sort of ancillary aesthetic manipulation to remind you that you should feel sad at any given time. On top of the fact that it is just career performances from everybody involved here. Casey Affleck, I still think, is one of the best actors working today. On top of that, you have Brad Inglesby, who writes a really good script that fleshes out all these characters. Brad Inglesby, too, he was the co-writer on Out of the Furnace as well, another Casey Affleck, Christian Bale movie. And the movie jumps around in timeline, too, because it goes back to when Jason Segel and Dakota Johnson first met. And it goes back to that. It goes back to the marriage between Matt and Nicole. And then it goes back to the present. It jumps around so much, it should be a hell of a lot more confusing than it actually is. But it's balanced so delicately. The emotional sentiment is handled with such grace. And it reminds me a lot of Manchester by the Sea. It reminds me a lot of that movie in the regard that it's a very sad movie, but it lets those sad moments breathe and isn't afraid to go there. It is available to watch on Amazon Prime. You can watch it on there, and you can rent it in a handful of different outlets if you don't have Amazon Prime. It's just a spectacularly really well-made movie. And for what it's worth, Jake Owen, country singer Jake Owen, makes his acting debut in this, and he's very good. He wrote the 2013 banger. I think it was earlier. It was 2011, I think. The 2011 banger Barefoot Blue Jean Night, if you remember that song. He's good in this thing. He's pretty damn good. He's got a very nice kind of almost Paul Walker-ish screen presence here. Our friend Gabriella Cowperthwaite, the sleeper movie of the year. Excellent movie. I knew it was going to be a top 3, maybe top 5 at the beginning of the year. It started number 1. It was the first thing I watched in 2021. It ends the year at number 1, Our Friend.
Do you want to go through your 10 through 6 real quick?
I'll do that at the end. Dom, you go.
Okay.
All right. Yeah, dude. So my number 1 is going to be proud and leading the charge here is West Side Story 2021, starring Steven Spielberg. You know, that's Spielberg doing the dances in the gym. No, directed by Steven Spielberg. Yeah, dude, there aren't a lot of stories that reach the level of inspiration that decries the term inspiration, and West Side Story is one of them. Both its story, its timely story, ever eternal story, and its book, its songs, gorgeous songs, and the fact that 1961's West Side Story is one of my favorite musicals of all time, movie musicals, and the fact that the 2021 version beats the 61 version every other day because they're competing with each other in my mind, right? Back and forth. That is an accomplishment, for me to be able to think in that way. A movie that I grew up with. There's a nostalgia factor for me too. But you know what? The way Spielberg approached this movie, Steve said it best. You feel like he's been directing musicals his whole goddamn life, and this is his first. And of course, it's Spielberg. He's no stranger to movies, but it's still goddamn impressive to me that he was able to do that. Meta for a bit, how this movie was able to honor the 61 movie with the inclusion of Rita Moreno, transforming a role that was, C-list in terms of the whole cast list, the characters' roles there, but bringing it to the forefront, giving it extra dimension by making her be the halfway point between the two rival gangs is incredible. In many ways, it honored the past better than Spider-Man did. It's actually really cool how, weirdly enough, those two movies hit like similar emotional beats for me. Again, that maybe the nostalgia of the 61 West Side Story, but dude, the color, the choreography, the deeper look into the social issues without being too ham-fisted. Another great moment in that regard is the character of Anybody's, who in the 61 West Side Story was a tomboy, but in this movie, still very much a tomboy. But there's an extra line there, a very subtle line where she yells out, "I ain't no boy," something like that. It's like, oh, okay. That's probably what that character was really suffering through, a potential trans issue there. And that's just a microcosm of how this new take on the old standard really is transformative. I might even be so bold as to say this may be the greatest movie remake of all time, certainly in my book, and I probably in contention. I need to see a full list of that, but it's goddamn good. And the fact that so much of this I think two members of this cast, Rachel Ziegler as Maria and Ariana DeBose as Anita, dude, goddamn, if Ariana DeBose wins Best Supporting Actress for the same exact role that Rita Moreno did in the movie that she shared the screen with Rita Moreno, that's a story for all time. So yeah, dude, strong number 1 for me here. It's nostalgic. It honors the past, and it's a brand new take on this fantastic story. There's the trailer included on the old DVD I have of the original West Side Story movie, and it's the trailer says, as I'm going to butcher it again, but as time goes on, West Side Story gets younger, and this Steven Spielberg here with this story has vindicated that line.
Yeah, it's excellent. West Side Story, such a treat to see. That was another one that we got to discuss on the show. Really well done movie, top to bottom in the rare elite remake. That's what I called it.
Yeah.
Do you guys want to take an intermission just to play it safe real quick? Like, I don't think I would take that long, but then like going also through our 6 through 10 and then as well as wrapping up the show in under 8 minutes, that's gonna be
Absolute. Yeah, that's a
I'm
tough
down.
ask.
Yep.
We'll take another quick intermission right now on Sleepless with Steve. Come to you live and in living color. A show so big we got to take 2 intermissions. Be back in just under 60 seconds. This is Sleepless with Steve. Back and better than ever. Second intermission is the charm. Sleepless with Steve live on YouTube. Wrapping up our favorite films of 2021. Joseph, you've got a number one you got to share.
Yes, I do. All right. This number one, I mean, this was the year of going back to the theater. And I really feel like there was one movie that really did capture the feeling of being back in a cinema. Like that stupid AMC promo with, what's her name at the start? Nicole Kidman. What she's saying there is true. It's just how it's being delivered and how it's done makes it cheesy. But it is true though. I missed it, and it was great that like this was one of the first few movies to really start coming back when theaters were all reopening, or at least most of them were, because the vaccine was coming out and everything. It was in the middle of the summer, and I was so happy to go to a theater to see this. My number one of 2021 is F9. Now, the saga here, I'm kidding. It's a Quiet Place Part 2. Yeah, oh my god, you know, hold on, I'm getting a bunch of messengers. I thought I muted these notifications. A Quiet Place Part 2 to me was everything I wanted a sequel to be to this. Because when I heard they were making a sequel to A Quiet Place, I said to myself, why? What is even the point? The first one ended in a perfect spot. What's the point of even continuing it? And John Krasinski said, I'll show you why it's the point to continue it, because I have more to do. And he kept it short. I mean, the movie's only an hour and 37 minutes, and it is a ride for an hour and 37 minutes. I had a blast being in a theater to watch this, because the sound in this movie was incredible. Every sound they make, you're already clenching your chair. You're like, shit, how are they going to get out of this one next? There's amazing performances from Emily Blunt. The two children, especially Millicent Simmons and Noah Jupe, do a great job in this movie as well. And of course, Cillian Murphy, who I thought was great in this movie as basically, you know, the character that kind of replaced John Krasinski's role in the first one. They have a great opening sequence of showing you the, you know, day zero of this whole event with these monsters. And finally, I mean, like, the reason why I loved it so much is because I'm really hoping this third one's going to be good. And with having the director of Pig, which I still have not seen Pig, but I mean, just hearing everybody talk about that movie, I think he is a perfect choice for that film. I grew up loving the Alien movies. I grew up loving like those kind of horror films with a creature and following characters throughout a saga of films. I mean, at least Aliens, not 3 or 4. And it just felt good to finally get a monster flick that's like that again, where you're following a group of characters trying to survive these horrific events. And it's kept minimal, the action's very close to the characters and everything. It's not trying to be big budget or anything. It's very creative filmmaking here with an action premise, with a creative premise of keeping silent, especially that first film too, which there's not that much dialogue in it. While this second one though does have more dialogue, it does still feel like a Quiet Place movie at its heart. And I think that was the biggest, probably the best, I forget what I'm going to say here, but that was the best impression, there we go, that this movie gave me, is that while this movie did have talking now and everything, it still felt like a true sequel to that original one. I had a blast watching this movie, and I can't wait to see what they do with part 3. It is by far my favorite film I saw this year, and I look forward to watching it every time. I've seen it already 3 times on Paramount Plus, once in the theater, twice on Paramount Plus, I should say. And I had just a blast watching it.
Good choice, man. Yeah, and I'm stoked that Michael Sarnowski's home in the 3rd movie. This was another movie that was just a really good theater experience. I'm glad they did not wait or I'm glad they did not, get impatient and drop this on video on demand, because these movies, if you get a nice, respectful audience, if you're lucky, which 2 for 2 on these movies in my experiences, I know, Joe, you beg to differ with you, but I've had really good luck with the theater experiences in these movies. This is the movie they should just refuse to sell popcorn to people who are going to see this thing, anything. It is massive. What the theater experience does for these movies, and just making these movies so damn unnerving and frightening. I can't wait. I really cannot wait for the 3rd movie, because what I'm thinking I might even do for the 3rd movie is watch the first 2 movies on Thursday afternoon and then go Thursday night and see the 3rd movie.
That's a great idea.
I think I'm going to do that. I think I'm going to try to get home early and watch both of them, and then go to the theater a half hour, hopefully finish about maybe a half hour, 40 minutes before it's time to go.
Dude, and then, the way the movie starts is it'll be perfect if that's how 3 starts too, where it's literally maybe 5 minutes after the events of the first movie.
For sure. Now, did you guys, I didn't take a look at your list, obviously. Did you guys do 6 through 10?
Dom does have an honorable mention. I know you do, and so do I.
Okay, I'll wrap up mine really quickly, because I did 6 through 10 over here. I think these boys were waiting for number 6 to show up on my top 5 list, but it did get edged out. Barb and Star go to Vista Del Mar. You know what? I am really pissed off this thing came out in February last year, because this is a bona fide summer movie. Damn the pandemic for 150,000 reasons, but one of the top 100 reasons is that we screwed out of seeing this thing in July of 2020 in the theaters, and then they drop it in February when it's 10 degrees out here. But this movie was so much fun. Top to bottom, it should be a highlight reel on Kristen Wiig when her acting career is all wrapped up in several decades to go. This movie also shows that Jamie Dornan, contrary to popular belief, can indeed act. Surprisingly, I was just as shocked as anybody else. Barb and Star go to Vista Del Mar. I'd love to see a sequel, and I know I'm not the only one. Shout out Matt Singer for making sure I wasn't alone. He included this. I think it was number 2 or 3 on his list. You can watch that one on Hulu. DMX, Don't Try to Understand, one of the music box documentaries on HBO Max. I'm not necessarily the biggest fan of DMX's music. I do like a handful of his songs, but this documentary is not what you think it is. This documentary is not a movie that is predominantly about his drug use. It is honestly a sad documentary about him trying to get on the straight and narrow upon getting released from prison, and the stuff he had planned up until he died. It's a very sad documentary, but it really shows his power, especially when he's going through the streets of Yonkers, where he grew up, and talking to people that stand in the very exact street corners that he once hung out on and sold drugs on and all this other stuff. That's a very good documentary. It's called Don't Try to Understand, and well worthy of that title in a few scenes. Mandibles, which is the one movie I don't believe anybody in the state of Illinois has probably heard of. This is the movie made by the same guy who directed that killer tire movie Rubber, Dupois. Yeah, Mandibles. This is an excellent movie. Let me just briefly explain this movie. It's about these two morons that steal this car, and they find a giant, like, size of a beanbag fly, like a fly. A gigantic fly in the trunk of their car, and they don't even question it. They don't even try to kill it. They treat it to be like a drone and steal stuff for them. It is a hilarious movie. It's in French, super funny, perfect length, like 80 minutes, like a live action Beavis and Butthead type of movie. One of the funniest comedies this year. Just a very funny, weird movie. And that fly was all practical effects, no CGI. That was the more incredible part of that whole thing. And that fly is kind of cute after a while. Honestly, look up some photos of the movie Mandibles. But there's that. City of Lies, which was supposed to be released all the way back in 2018. That's the Johnny Depp, Forrest Whitaker movie about the LAPD corrupt investigation into the murder of Biggie Smalls. Now that movie too, don't believe the hype that movie got delayed because of Johnny Depp's beef with the location manager or something. This movie was cut and dry suppressed by the LAPD. This movie was cut and dry suppressed by the LAPD.
Damn.
You can look it up. You can
this
read
was supposed to come out in 2018?
Yes, I remember the posters and the trailers for this. It finally saw a release in February of this year on video on demand. Nobody saw it. It was a low-key release. I'm kind of surprised it actually came out because this movie draws on a lot of corruption within the LAPD's investigation to the murder of Biggie Smalls. It also touches on Tupac Shakur, and it features Biggie Smalls' mother in the movie as well. That's a really good movie. One of Johnny Depp's most nuanced performances since Black Mass. Really well done movie, top to bottom. And it helps if you're like me. You can't really see it, but them my Biggie Smalls figures right here. I got 4 of the 5. I need to take out a loan to get the 5th. And anyway, the last one is The Green Knight. Excellent period piece movie. Dark, weird, kind of a meditative movie to really good performance by Dev Patel. Not your typical King Arthur story. I groaned when I saw it initially that A24 was going to be helming a King Arthur movie. But I'm glad they went the direction they did in this movie. This was such an awesome theater experience, too. I saw it alone on like a Sunday morning. It was beautiful.
Perfect.
Some really interesting visuals in this movie. And it solidifies my belief. David Lowery is one of the most visionary directors working today. He made A Ghost Story. He made Pete's Dragon. Excellent director. His talents are beautifully used, and he brings a lot of talent to The Green Knight. Honorable mentions briefly. Last Night in Soho, check that one out. The Lost Daughter, which is now on Netflix. Olivia Colman coming for that Oscar this year again. And also West Side Story as well. Got to mention West Side Story. That's my list. You can read the list more in depth at stevepulaski.com.
Dom, want to go through your honorable mentions real quick?
Just real quick, Ma Rainey, awesome performances all around. Pretty safe. A lot of similar beats as One Night in Miami. Sound of Metal. Honestly, that for me, that movie got a little lost in the middle. But dude, that opening where he's losing his hearing, I was like, okay, so I need to talk to my doctor about tinnitus. I put that in my phone. Like, it scared the hell out of me.
Seriously. One of the saddest, I think I count that as a 2020 movie. That has probably the saddest ending of any movie last year.
You know what? Okay, let's talk about that ending. Saddest, just very briefly, saddest ending, sad ending, yes. But you know what? Literally the last 5 seconds of the movie, he finds himself. So you know what? That could arguably be a happy ending. A very bittersweet ending.
You could argue.
Most.
It's a glass half full, half empty almost, but that ending
it is
crushed
tragic.
me. That ending crushed me.
The piano scene where his former girlfriend is singing on the piano towards the end. I was like, Jesus Christ. Oh, it's like he has that. Now we're just talking about Sound of Metal. It's just he has this feeling the whole like last third of the movie, and then it's like the piano scene. It's like zooming in. I'm like, God damn it. Sound of Metal. Harder They Fall, of course.
You're actually making my eyes well over here. I'm serious, man. You're making my eyes well over here, man.
Bro,
that was a movie.
As we're talking about this, I had to lower down the headphones. I'm just like, yeah, I do remember the opening just freaking me out a bit.
Yeah, dude. Harder They Fall, of course. We talked about that. In the Heights. Yep, hell yeah. That's like one of those also. It's like that's an awesome movie, but it's like right in the same wheelhouse, similar to how Ma Rainey and One Night in Miami. This one's In the Heights and West Side. But for me, West Side Story just has that familiarity for him. But dude, Tick Tick Boom and In the Heights, Lin-Manuel Miranda is just he's not going to sleep for a long time. He's just working his ass off. And he's like, and it's almost getting to the point where it's like, it's so stereotypically musical. Like Tick Tick Boom is about the dude who wrote Rent. It's like, okay, cool. But I wound up loving that movie, and it's damn good. Damn good. We never talked about Dune, and that like in terms of like the sci-fi genre, that is, I mean, you could say a lot about the book Dune on the sci-fi genre, but Dune this year, or last year, 2021, really accomplished a lot. Despite being in a post Star Wars, a post Star Trek, a post every other sci-fi movie that it inspired, having already been made before it, was still able to etch it out. And Villeneuve, I honestly believe Villeneuve is the only one who could have done that in that way, because he's so distinct.
When you said we didn't talk about Dune, do you mean like in our top 10 list, like, or our list at all? Like, is that what you meant?
Did we not? Did I miss that? Did I just?
No. I first you threw me.
I
off.
was trying to remember because we did review it.
I was like, wait, no. I'm like, I know we reviewed it.
in our, we did review it, but not in our. We haven't mentioned it at all this show.
We haven't mentioned it yet.
Okay,
yeah.
Fair. That's what I thought you meant.
Yeah, but I can see why, because of everything else that's surrounding that poster right now. Mitchell's a Machine, hell yeah, #1 animated movie. Minari, goddamn, that's a movie that you think you'll forget, and then you think is forgettable, but then you think about it for just a moment. It's like, god damn, all the acting just floods back to me. It's like, yeah, that's.
I know that hit you. I know that movie hit you in a different way too.
I mean, dude, look at that poster, dude. It's a tiny Asian kid walking through green fields while there's an American flag in the background. That movie was built for me, and it's like, yeah, that lines up perfectly.
Grandma smells old.
Yeah, and I'm really glad you guys had me watch Last Duel. That was a surprise movie, and like, it's so funny because it's like, the poster here is more forgiving in this regard, but the fact that the movie is called The Last Duel, about two dudes in medieval times, killing each other, fighting each other to the death, you think that's just going to be the whole movie with some buildup. No, and yes, it is that, but this movie surprisingly becomes one of the most feminist movies of the year, in my opinion. It's like, oh, okay, cool. We're going to see the point of view through a woman in this time. And it's it's no promise. It's not like Promising Young Woman, but like it's like up there with it. You know what I mean? In terms of how it addresses these issues.
That is a movie. Sorry, go on.
Oh, I'll just say, Steve, you said that you wish it was in your written review. You said it was more. You wish it were more subtle, right? The Last Duel and how it approaches those feminine topics. I remember you writing that.
Yeah.
And I agree. I agree that it wasn't subtle, but just the way it hit me where it's like, maybe we don't need to be subtle right now with what's going on in the world. And it wasn't too much to its detriment, in my opinion. Maybe it was for you. Again, the fact that that angle, that third wheel came out of nowhere, I didn't mind it. The fact that it wasn't subtle.
Yeah.
So yeah, Joe, what were you saying?
I was gonna say, the one thing I love about that movie is that with each point of view, the movie just gets better and better. Like, it starts out with Matt Damon's point of view, like, oh, this is pretty cool, some brutal action scenes and like, interesting drama, like, did this actually happen? You see Adam Driver's point of view, oh my god, where's the story gonna go now? And then you see Jodie Comer's point of view, like, wow, men ain't shit. It's just like
it's actually like a 4-part movie.
Yeah, no,
Damon's
really
view, Driver's view,
Comer's.
I'm not gonna butcher her name, Jodie Comer's view, and then the duel
finale,
itself. Which, dude, that duel was awesome.
That was
like,
it
there
was
were
a
like
sick ass duel.
There were 7 points where I thought they were going to end it. I'm like, no, we're going to keep going here, and that's some good ass fight choreography.
Yeah. I'll go into mine. I'll keep it short because like literally, 4 of these films were talked about throughout the night. My number 10 is Dune. My number 9 is Zola. My number 8 is The Last Duel. Number 7 is Spider-Man No Way Home. And number 6 is In the Heights. I'll just go more into Zola since all the other films were talked about, and I basically will just echo what you guys have said tonight. If you have not watched Zola yet, this to me was the wildest movie I saw this year. This movie is about the real Twitter thread of a girl named Zola who goes down to Florida with a girl she meets the night before to make money at a stripper joint. And the wild night that ensues, actually, I'm sorry, the wild 48 hours that ensues while in Florida with her. This thing is, it's from A24. It's wild. It's crazy. If you haven't checked this movie out, it's insane. I really wish we got to watch it on Sleepless. This was one of the movies I kind of like crammed in before we did this show to see, like, you know, all right, what are some of my best of the year? Like, I want to know, like, you know, would make it on there. And Zola was one of them that made it on there. I still haven't seen Green Knight. Encanto, and then there was one more that everybody was talking. Oh, Tick Tick Boom and West Side Story. I didn't get a chance to see either of those because of just timing on my part when everything else was going on. But I made time for Zola, and I'm glad I did. Definitely check it out. It is crazy. Watch the movie, then go online and read the post interviews with everybody who was involved in the story. Zola herself, Stephanie, the girl she literally meets the night at Hooters. And the boyfriend in the group as well. It's a wild ass movie.
I'm watching on mute, of course. I'm watching just the trailer for Zola on YouTube. The top comment is, imagine one of those classes where you have to read a book and then watch the film adaptation, but it's Zola and the original Twitter thread.
Yeah, man, it's insane. I had a blast watching this movie.
Good stuff. Yeah. Good stuff. You know, what a big list. I told you it was going to be a big show, and it did not disappoint whatsoever. Next week, we're talking about the worst movies, and Lord knows we're coming with our knives out like Freddy Krueger on it. Top 5 worst films of 2021 will be tackled next week. With good, there always comes bad, and these are always very fun to dive into. And I'll say that we covered 3 of my 5 of my top 5 on the show. So there will be a little bit of overlap here. But that's going to do it for Sleepless with Steve tonight. Really great show. Excellent job to Joe, especially, too. Yes. Doing a lot of legwork. He always does a great job with these shows. I've been watching it in the other window. Excellent job, Giuseppe. As always, you got another lofty challenge that I know you will slay next week. In the meantime, again, you can check out my top 10 on stevepulaski.com. I'll definitely post a highlight of least of our number 1 review too on YouTube. Highlights will be posted on the YouTube channel on which you are watching right now. For Dominic Guanzon, Joe Viso, and yours truly, running a little tardy today, but we made up for it with a good show. This has been Sleepless with Steve.